the month, you're going to have to pick one. You're going to have to let us know which one works, my dude. And then he's like, okay, well, I'll not go do this one thing. So
was his wife in your group and then stopped?
No,
or
no.
Okay.
Like I'm laughing uproariously inside, but just no. That no is the simple answer. So
okay. See, what the real answer was is they all used to go line dancing, but then they all decided they fuck that.
Yeah. I want to hear this story.
Did we make it? Is 30 seconds to cut off or a minute?
I think it was a minute, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I think they keep changing the rules.
Let's assume a minute just for the sake of Danish standard time.
Yeah. After the show, I want the story. But yeah, well, welcome to the While We Weren't Recording podcast.
You were really close to the other one just then.
Yeah. We're actually talking about the Aeronaut's Windlass, the big battle.
So you can all leave now.
Yeah. Little known fact that While We Weren't Recording has a silent D in front of that first W. So
listen,
While We Weren't Recording,
I don't criticize you, especially not on air. Okay.
Maybe you should start.
First of all, yes, you do. Second of all, you just have more things to criticize than the rest of us.
We still love you, Andreas. I still love you, Andreas.
Thank you.
So, yeah. I was assuming it was safe to assume there was two of us out of this group, but I didn't want to speak.
It depends entirely on how much coffee the directors had this morning.
Not enough.
See, Andreas, you're out.
Not enough to proclaim that she likes me. Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah,
enough for
how long has it been since we were reading this book? My brain is tired. I need way more.
But you have the all-powerful notes. Show the two people that are actually watching us today that you have all-powerful notes.
So far, we have 0. Notes. So let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Not even fake Andreas, who's his alt. Get in chat. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'll chat with all the 0 people that are there. Hey,
no, Andreas has to send his other Andreas in there.
Oh yeah, I got you.
Yeah, where are you at, bro?
You didn't send out the Andreas signal. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Fuck,
which hat does this Andreas wear? Is he the bucket head, or he's got it like a fishing cap, or
whichever one's not wearing the fedora on screen?
He's got the goatee.
Oh, nice.
Is it felt? So is it glued to his face with?
Obviously, it's a puppet.
So he's the evil Andreas.
Yeah, he's the evil one. I'm gonna go.
Which makes him cooler. We should get him on.
Right. This is gonna go great. We're going to finish this damn book because it's not going to be hanging over.
Not necessarily today, though.
Yeah.
It is 10% of this book left. We are at chapter 66, and it is 90%. I took notes. We have to do this. We have other shit to talk about, not just this book.
How many pages?
I did it single-sided, so it's several. And
so we're getting through half this battle.
So we're screwed. Yeah.
Well.
Okay.
Do you guys remember where we were at?
Ships are in the sky. That's
why I asked you.
Right. Yeah. Yes, there are ships in the sky. Itasca has not shown up yet, but Miss Shark has blown up the landing yard at Albion and did it in such a way that just barely Predator was allowed to survive, basically by a miracle and Journeyman. And he's still trying to run and set up the stuff. And Cavendish has stolen all of Ferris's wagons. Ferris needs the wagon so that he can save people from the poison that's killing them. Basic things like that, you remember?
Well, I mean, he needs the wagon so that he can be alive. But then once he's alive, he can...
Well, he's alive, but to function.
Yeah. I don't know.
He can't eat. He can't, do anything. He cannot take care of himself. He will die slowly, but we need him to be alive actively right now.
Do we need to resurrect that debate from the 90s about vegetables again? So just saying.
Yes. Yes, we do. Yeah. Because we are determined not to get through this book today.
Yes. Fair. Okay. There's our two people, by the way. Thank you. So
is one of them evil, Andreas?
I can't look at that, but
we don't get to see the names of people until they start chopping.
Until they actually start contributing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's Cody.
Did we leave off with Gwen trying to reconnect the wire, or...
She did that successfully.
Well, yeah.
And she hurt herself a little bit.
I was on the edge of my seat for the last 3 months, wondering if she had connected that wire.
Did Gwen make it?
On my like third or fourth reread of this book? So
I mean, like we've already covered when like Bridget woke up and after having like her head hurt a little bit of like, wait, what's going on? And they were just kind of like having a moment of like, we're in the sky chasing after the Mist Shark and about to have a sky battle, and we just get to sit here being helpless, doing nothing. So they had that moment. Gwen doesn't do well for that moment for very long, but we'll get there. So Predator is firing on Mist Shark now. She has caught up to them and started destroying the web. And just as a small little thing to remember, there is the web and there's the shroud on these space or sky ships. The web helps them move. The shroud is their protective barrier.
Shields.
Yes.
Shields.
And the canvas is another fancy word for sails, which has nothing to do with this.
Right. They very rarely use their sails, and they're not going to use the sails in this battle.
Bummer.
So the Mist Shark has lost about half of their shroud and their web. I think they are basically lamed. They're just still trying to fight because they haven't given up yet. The Predator is going up, like under and up, so kind of going to the other side to be able to get more of the web taken away. And as it's ascending, the Mist Shark loses most of the web and is basically lame. And Grimm orders Creedy with the fire and the guns to fire by the numbers, which is so it's going by like number 2, number 4, number 8, and it's pointing at the shroud. It is basically, we're about to kill you. Give up already. And Grimm is able to see that Calliope runs in at basically number 4 shot, cuts down the flag as the universal sign of surrender. And she's still flying the Delosian flag right now, even though she's clearly working with the Aurorans. Whatever. The color of the flag does not necessarily matter here.
Don't think the flag needs much to a mercenary pirate anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
The Delosians are going to be so pissed that she surrendered. They didn't even know they had that ship, and then they lost it. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And about 15 minutes later, Calliope has to show up on Predator to start bargaining the surrender. And she comes over with the wagons for Ferris, and which is really important. All of that is just taken away immediately. And she has the book that Cavendish was very angry to have to give up, but she had to give it over to Grimm. And they start bargaining about what's going to happen with the Mist Shark's crew. If Grimm takes them as civilian people who were acting in war, then they would get worse treatment. And so Calliope is pushing to get them recognized as soldiers acting in war, which gives them more protections. She is in no place to make demands, and he makes that very clear to her, and basically is like about to force her to say the words, "I surrender." And then he kind of takes pity on her because ultimately he's a nice guy.
Too nice.
He's a simp. I think simp's the word. So.
What he should have done was taken her hat. Because that's the universal sign of surrender for a captain.
He has a hat.
It doesn't matter. Her hat is probably better with a bigger feather on it.
That is probably true.
That would have made him a Commodore.
Correct. He would have been like Barbossa, and then he would have been undead, and we would never have to worry about issues again.
Is that a prerequisite for being a Commodore?
It's the only one I know because that's what it was in the movie. You know, that and the British guy, but whatever.
I mean, something about Bayard and whatever. I'll get there. So she has to be polite.
Cooler, Commodore.
So she has to request that her crew is taken as prisoners of war versus just as mercenary civilians. And Grimm points out that he knows that what she did was trying to be nice, both in her method of firing at the landing yard, giving Predator the most amount of time possible to escape, as well as she had offered him to do a job to save her for she called it a bookkeeping scheduling error of being needing in 2 places at once. And he refused because he couldn't trust her. But he just made it clear as, I recognize what you did as whatever attempt of trying to be nice. And then he kind of asks why. And she looks around at Predator and gets sad. And it's like, it was my home once too. And that makes him sad. And Kettle's trying to like swallow his tongue to keep silent.
Kettle's like, I guess I should uncock this then, right? So,
but I still got the backup.
Kettle's great.
Yeah. He's a real bro. So
And so with that kind of at an understanding, Grimstar says, okay, we're going to go back to Albion. You're going to be following us very slowly, and all of the guns will be pointing at Miss Shark. Any sign of resistance, and you will be blown out of the sky. Do you understand? And she just says, I'm not an idiot, Francis. Right.
Maybe she still keeps calling him Francis. So
she does. She knows that it irritates him. But
definitely the time to call him Francis then.
Right.
Yeah.
I got a loaded gun pointed at my head and my entire crew. Better cheese him off one last time. So
She just can't help herself, can she?
Stubborn to the end, or just like obstinate. It's, Harry Dresden would be mouthing off to the thing that kills him. Of course, she would do that too.
Well, that would be
all
his
the
own
same-
magic collapsing the ship at this point, because he'd be useless.
Grimm is basically saying everything has been really shit the past few days, although he's used much more polite words. Do not test me. But right as he's saying that, one of the spotters on the Predator says that there's been contact. And there's another vessel. It's inbound vessel. It's high, west by southwest, coming fast. If it's coming from the west, that means it's not coming from the east where Spire Albion is. So therefore, it's an enemy. And
balls.
exactly. So Grimm, thinking pretty fast, very scared, he turns to his estranged current wife. You don't need to be here. Get in your launch and go. Because he knows that that's an Auroran vessel, and he doesn't want her to die too, because he knows that they're going to blow the Predator out of the sky and kill everyone. He doesn't need her. And she's just like, I don't suppose I could convince you to surrender. And he says nothing. It's like, yes, the duty calls. You must go die valiantly and pointlessly in the sky. And so she leaves the Predator.
If he's lucky. Otherwise, it's,
Yeah.
2 miles down at a minimum and screaming the whole time.
He could have shot the Miss Shark at the oncoming ship. That would have worked.
Yes, they're well known for having that capability. So
They don't have a slingshot.
just we'll roll the ship on its side. We'll get that giant rubber band between all the masts and ship railgun. Old school.
So they sound general quarters of now they're back in combat again, and chapter 67 goes to Gwen's point of view, and she's trying to go from the infirmary up to the bridge. She can't sit still for very long.
We're
she
under
doesn't really
attack.
know.
This is bullshit.
She doesn't quite understand that part yet, but she gets to the bridge just as Creedy starts bellowing orders to the crew, and she sees Ransom. She doesn't know who it is, but clearly it's the captain of the Mist Shark, and she's like, Ransom is looking impatient and covered in grease and grime and oh wait, no. Sorry. 2 different women on the page here. It gets confusing. Ransom is like very quickly and adeptly getting off the bridge and off the Predator, going on to launch the Mist Shark, and they run into each other, and Ransom looks down at Gwen and says, like, takes it on the grease and grime and says, God in heaven, is Journeyman allowing women into his engine room now? What is happening to the world? And Gwen just says, excuse me, because such an offensive language, she can't handle it. And Calliope
Being called a woman.
I suppose, and continues on her way. But Gwen tries to arrest her because she doesn't understand. So she brings up her gauntlet and everything. It's like, stop, you're escaping. You there, Holt. And Ransom just laughs at her and continues going. You
Very
have bigger
Gwenish.
problems than me now, girl. And so then Gwen continues on to the bridge to talk to Grimm, and he's being very polite of, good morning, Miss Lancaster, what can I do for you? As if they're not about to be squished by a gigantic spaceship. And she demands to know things of like, why is that woman going free? And he kind of slips and says, I saw no point in her die. She had no reason to be on the ship to be able to distract us in combat.
I forgot about that. Oh, she shouldn't die. Die? Distract us in combat. We're fine.
Of anticipation, trying to distract us from combat.
And that's what Gwen is like, oh, is that what we're doing now? We're in serious combat again? It's like, yes, put your goggles on. And she's just like, I don't understand. Why not keep her as like a hostage, or just keep her in general? It's like, well, if she was here and the Mist Shark is over there, but enemies coming at us, then the Mist Shark is going to continue firing and continue being a combatant. if Ransom goes away, then they have no reason to fight. They're safe. And
They don't even have a flag anymore.
Yeah. If she had been on the ship, she would just been like bumping elbows, getting in the way, just being a nuisance. And Gwen says, I see. Am I interfering with the ship's operation by being here? And he starts to reply very quickly, and then he stops himself. He says, not at present. Yeah. Currently, we're underway. It remains to be seen.
That's the polite way of saying not yet, right?
Yeah.
So
You get about 30 seconds to clear off.
Put your fucking goggles on or else.
Yeah. Right.
So the whole reason that she came up here was to say, I thought you should know Captain Master Ferris's gear has been returned to him. He and Folly are in the infirmary now. And it's like, can he save the people? It's like, he's trying. That poor old man looked awful. He's had a difficult time of it the past few hours. And then it gets a little bit more tactical. Itasca is breaking out their chase guns, which is the guns towards the front of the ship to fire at the thing that they are chasing that's right in front of them. And she's like, oh, from that far away, they must have the really new models. Because of course they do. Because they're the big monster that's chasing after them. Of course they have better equipment than Predator does.
Yeah, they're a hero ship. So, you know.
Yeah. But Grim is hoping to be able to outrun them a little bit. So he says, so much for that advantage. It's like, okay, so then we're going to the battle. And Kettlestar says, not for very long. This whole conversation, it's Gwen and Grim, and Kettle just makes sarcastic remarks the whole time.
Right.
And
yeah.
like,
as a reminder, in case anybody is, not up on current events in the book, Itasca, it's a battle cruiser, right? So
yes.
It's like, it's, cruiser sized, faster engines and bigger guns. It's
and
specifically designed
and everything, right? It's just
well, yeah, but even
unbeatable.
even aside from that, like, it's specifically designed to hunt down ships like Predator and not even feel it, right?
yes.
So yeah, it's it's bad news. So
Yeah.
It's
Grim
the same ship they ran into the start of the book, right? And that didn't go well.
Yes.
Right.
So Grim
I mean,
gives
they lived,
basically
so.
that exact description right here. And so Gwen is like, oh, that's why
Sorry.
we're running. No, it's great. Save me the trouble. Like, so we're running from her then. That's what we're doing. And Kettle says, we're trying.
Yeah. Like, we do have this bigger power crystal and everything, but, so.
Yeah, connections. Journeyman is losing his non-existent hair, everything like that. And Gwen starts trying to think through what she knows, and she's starting to understand that that's not much. I know nothing of aerial combat, Captain, but would it not be wise to descend into the mist and avoid action that way? And under most circumstances, Grim agrees that that's what he would do. And yet Predator is ascending into the sun. Itasca was fully underway by the time we spotted her, so even while standing still, it's necessary for us to open as much distance. Predator is lighter and smaller and also has this crazy crystal of what do we do with now. Itasca has so much more weight that it can't ascend as fast as Predator can, so it's the best gambit to try to open distance.
And they have had experience going up and down recently, so they're ready for it.
Yeah.
They were recently a Windlass, so,
Okay. And so once they get out of the cannon range, Gwen is asking, then we dive back down? Normally, yes, but this new crystal is not seated correctly. We really can't find out that we cannot stop diving in the middle of a dive. So it's not really actually fully combat ready for this. And so as he describes, well, we don't have that option. All we're really doing is running away upwards. And Gwen's like, so what are we doing? And Kettle's, run like hell and pray. They start some evasive maneuvers while Itasca is firing. And it's very bright and dazzling and disorienting. And Gwen is like, God in heaven, what happens if that hits us? It's like, we're at the edge of the range. And so they're just barely able to stay basically safe because the power decreases with space. But the web isn't so lucky, as Kettle points out. And this is, again, the short description of the difference between the web gives maneuvers, the shroud gives safety, and the web goes out further than the shroud because if they can pull it in shorter, but if they did that, they'd have even less maneuverability. So
that would be slower, right? Maneuverability aside.
Yes.
Even.
The ether silk web extends beyond the protection by the shroud, is vulnerable to fire. We'd slow to a crawl if we pull it in. And then he says that it's called, to attack the web is called raking the web. And so Itasca is attempting to fire at the web to lame them. It's exactly what Predator just did to Miss Shark. Very, very standard battle maneuvers.
But their guns are better.
Yes. And so they keep going upwards, but what happens if they continue ascending? And, well, Kettle says we run out of up. Eventually they're going to run out of air, or the ability to just leave the planet. The air is too thin to breathe. And so Gwen's getting very frustrated. Like, what hope do we have? And Grimm kind of describes that Itasca's so large. It has so many complex systems. It has like 3 battle cores or something, and a steam turbine engine that's going all out. That they're so complex, they can kind of just hope for a sudden failure. Like, yeah. She can sprint as fast as we can, Kettle clarified, but we can keep up this pace for days at a time, and Itasca's going to run out of endurance. And they can't do too much evasive. Go ahead.
I was going to say, hell of a thing to bet on, that not a flagship, but a named ship that, has been bestowed to a fancy commander and stuff like that he hasn't drilled his crew to make sure that their shit is all, all as tight as possible so that they can chase ships like they need to, like it's probably just the nature of the systems, right? That he's hoping like one of the cores buckles, or the steam engine gives out. Just a little bit of degradation in their systems is probably enough, but that's quite the gamble. So
yes, they can't do too much that's evasive maneuvering around, because if they go side to side too much, they kind of stop going in a nice simple straight line, which gives them more space. And so Itasca would be able to be more straight and catch up quicker, so they really can't do much. But Grimm orders Creedy to rake the web, fire at will, and tries to fire back at them. And Creedy does a pretty good job, apparently. It causes some issues. There's ether silk that gets burned away. But Itasca has a lot more web because it's a bigger ship. So there's more of it to be able to hit, but they also have more stored in stock. And so they can just kind of keep spinning it out and have more to replace it with.
They hired a few Spider-Men instead of just one.
Gwen felt somewhat indignant at these facts. Well, that hardly seems fair. That's enough to get Grimm to laugh a little bit.
Well, war isn't fair.
Yeah.
Get a bigger ship if you want more web.
I mean, it's predators, right? That's why they tell you to confront most predators, because they're chicken shits. They eat when they've got an ambush on you or a size advantage or something like that. If you fight back, they're going to run. And Itasca is the predator in this case, despite the names. And you've got nothing to fight back with. You're the little rabbit. You run. So you run and pray.
Unless you're crazy, and then you fight with crazy.
Or stupid lucky, which they're also in this case. So
Gwen never really understands that she can die, because she just keeps asking, well, then how will you defeat her? She's like, their success is a given in her mind. And Grimm keeps explaining, like, as we are right now, I can't. Itasca's so much bigger. There's some hope that as they're going eastward, going towards Albion, maybe he would just give up and run away or change his mind or something, but Itasca won't, because of the previous history of the fact that Predator got away from them at the beginning of the book, and this is the kind of battle that's going to affect morale for the rest of the war. If
also,
they
don't
could
underestimate the spite of a spurned captain.
Yes.
If only they'd gotten shot down at the beginning, this wouldn't be an issue.
Seriously, Grimm, get with it.
Yeah. But why is Grimm not just surrendering then? It's like he has some form of plan, and he's not really explaining it yet. But Gwen's like not giving up. If the goal was simply to escape and remaining within sight of Itasca with certain death, then risking a dive would be the most sensible option. Granted, the ship might have been able to take this strain, but it is a gamble worth thinking about. And he says that's true. So he has a gambit. They have been firing signal rockets ever since they left Spire Albion, and they're desperately hoping that somebody has been following them. to be able to come to their rescue. So if the signals have been spotted, and if any ships of the fleet have elected to follow us, we may have support. And if so, we may be able to take Itasca. And she says, there's a great many ifs in that statement, Captain. Yes.
Smelling a lot of if.
Yeah. You are risking everyone's life in an effort to take a single enemy ship. And a very important ship. And then they describe more of like why Itasca is so important. It's big. It's like the flagship. It's storied. It has a huge sway. Like if they win Itasca, that means a lot. And he's risking everyone's life on Predator to make such a gamble. But then one of the spotters says that there's contact. From the east, one of the Albion ships has arrived, and it's Glorious. So, which is a good thing because now they have help, but it's a bad thing because that's Rook. And Rook is the guy that Grimm punched in the nose or threatened to duel or all of the above in the beginning of the book.
This guy who's a fucking sniveling, belly-aching, I don't know, coward motherfucker. Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah.
Not exactly a great leader.
But the good news is Glorious is pound for pound a match for Itasca, right?
Yes.
That's what we're excited about. So
Glorious is a very good ship. And what is it? Glorious is a battle cruiser as well, equal to the task of engaging Itasca, and Commodore Rook has a solid, competent crew. I note, sir, that you did not say that Commodore Rook is a solid and competent. And Grimm says nothing, or it's not my place to judge, and Kettle starts making snorting sounds behind them. And then Gwen, in her very posh way of saying this, he's a pompous, lecherous ass, devoid of wit, the wit God in heaven gives to a simpleton, but he has a certain rat-like cunning, I suppose. He looks pretty enough in a uniform. And Kettle starts laughing. And Grimm says, I would not presume to contradict your opinion. And Kettle says, that's because the skipper doesn't fight battles he can't win. Okay. So there's more fighting. And engineer or the journeyman says that they're trying to do what they can. Grimm is trying to get as much power from it as possible. And he says, I'm stunned she hasn't buckled on us already. Some of these runs are being held together with bloody twine. I'll see what can be done. And then he just leaves. And there's some of the battles and the firing, and Gwen feels particularly helpless. But Itasca hasn't quite seen that Glorious is there yet because it's kind of on the other side of Predator. And so Grimm wants to suddenly get out of the way and let Glorious take some of the heat, as well as they can fight each other. One of the things he had said about not liking Rook coming to the rescue is like, well, there's a lot of angry Itasca behind us that we can give to him. But right at that moment is when Predator's luck runs out. They get shot by one of Itasca's hits, and it puts too much strain on one side of their shroud. Yeah, the ship's slewed heavily to the starboard, pulled off balance by the web is not able to function that much there. So it's like going too fast on one side, too slow on the other. And they're trying to do an evasive ascension immediately. And Glorious is coming up straight up from the mesosphere toward broadside Itasca, firing 30 cannon in rapid successive howling salvos of 10 guns each. And that's not insignificant, but Itasca is so well built that is able to bear that and be more or less okay. And it returns fire to Glorious, which is enough to cause the dorsal mast is cut in half. It's listing and not able to maneuver as well as it needs to. And with all of that, like Grimm still wants to continue fighting, turn around and help Glorious. But as Glorious is starting to list around, it just leaves. He just kind of ducks back into the mist and leaves, even as Grimm is starting to give orders of, we have to fight, we're going to go do things. And Kettle starts yelling obscenities at Rook as he's leaving, and there's nothing left to do if they don't have help. Chapter 68 goes back to Grimm's point of view, and he's just having that moment of despair of like they've got nothing else. Without help, there's nothing. And then Gwen is still right next to him and says, "What is that sound?" And she can hear trumpets.
Flight of the Valkyries.
How many times can Jim really pull that one out?
Well, I was gonna say like Magic Carpet Ride, but I wasn't sure if everyone was gonna get that reference. So
that's what's his name? His friend, Grimm's friend. What's his name?
Yeah.
That's
right.
It's dive sound, right? Like it sounds like trumpets.
Yeah, so the mysticism of these ships is with the cores, they basically have their own personalities. Predator sings as she's going into attack and diving and doing all the stuff. And at least one of these ships that's coming to help, Bayard's, sounds like trumpets.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if I remember correctly that it's not like the blowing trumpet. It's actually the ship's sound that sounds like trumpets.
Yes. All right, so Grimm then gets an idea. And importantly, the idea is not described in the book because we just get to see it happen. He tells Kettle, hard to port at flank speed, stay ahead of the turn. Itasca is trying to turn to make the broadside go at Predator. And so Kettle is going to be turning just to stay just ahead of it so that they can stay out of the blast. But it's forcing Itasca to chase after the bait. And he tells Creedy to fire at Itasca's bridge, which is not gentlemanly warfare. It's
commonly considered a dick move. Yeah,
very much so. And Creedy is like, huh? Why would you do that?
It's also a big fucking distraction. So
exactly. It's also generally not something that's effective because that's where it's most protected. Like the shroud is there. Like they're not really going to be able to do anything other than be annoying. And it's also a dick move. But he says, that's an order, fire at the bridge. And Journeyman calls up to Grimm and says, the portside trim crystal array is about to fold on us. We've got to get somewhere safe and quiet and cut power. And he says, understood, prepare to cut power to the port trim array. And Journeyman's like, what? Don't do it right now. He turns to Gwen and starts checking on her safety straps and like tightening them more and says, hold on to them with both hands, please. And she's like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. So because of the crazy amount of machinery that is on Itasca, it's blind or it's deaf. It cannot hear the trumpets that are coming because it has the gigantic steam engine that is helping it move oh so nimbly in the sky. And it's such a crazy threat. It can't hear it. And therefore firing at the bridge is the gigantic distraction. It makes them blind because the light on the shroud means that they can't see anything beyond that. So Itasca did not know that until way, way too close that Valiant, Thunderous, and Victorious were descending on them. And it's a pretty classic move, it says in the book, but Bayard brings his three between Predator and Itasca as they're descending down from the sun, which is also hard to see because it's hard to look up into the light that way. So they get to take the damage that Itasca was going to give to Predator and fire back. So Itasca's crew was too disciplined to panic at the face of that, and they give their entire broadside to Thunderous. Thunderous's shroud does not hold up to it very well, and the hull didn't stand much of a chance, and it is very heavy damage to it. A lot of it basically explodes, falls apart, and a lot of the crew just kind of falls to the surface. One of the very quick thinking people throws up a tracker and is able to be found, but they basically watch Thunderous go from healthy in a descending dive and then fall apart. Very scary. Grimm says to shift fire to the webs of Itasca to give the Commodore more chance to wear down. So Itasca is keeping on the original turn, trying to shelter the ravaged flank. Their port side had gotten kind of injured, but Valiant and Victorious split apart to try to circle around it. So Itasca puts the belly to Valiant and the starboard to Victorious, the starboard which is intact, and Valiant is trying to shoot upwards, and they're trying to 3D battles are really hard to keep track of.
Right. I don't know if you covered it either, but one of the things that's important to note here is like, so Glorious was another battle cruiser and would have been Itasca's peer, but these are heavy cruisers and, quite a bit smaller than Itasca overall. So it's like the three of them might be a match and kind of are, as we see, like, especially with Predator in the mix, but like any single one of them going toe to toe is not going to win either, so.
Yeah. It's still a very equal footing, even with 3 or 4 against 1. So,
and it's hard for them to coordinate being multiple, and what's effective against this type of warfare with their shields is concentrating fire on a specific point, right? So you can penetrate the shield, or just fire everywhere to overload it. But from what I remember of the mechanics of it, if you fire one place, you can like tear away the shroud at that point and get through.
Yes,
but that's
they call that ripple fire to fire in an order, like one after the other, after a specific thing, to be able to try to pierce through it, or they could just kind of do broadside overload it. It does depend on what works.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have, from what I remember, right? There's no wireless communication or anything like that, right? Between ships, no. So they can't. It's really hard to coordinate trying to shoot the same spot.
They just have protagonist telepathy, really. So Itasca focuses its broadside all on Victorious, doing it one at a time. And as much as fire as Itasca takes, it still is able to just kind of stay intact. Victorious is pretty injured, and when it fires back at Itasca again, is only at like half strength. Valiant rolls almost horizontal as she slips beneath Itasca and ripple fires directly upwards into the belly. And as it goes up again, the belly gets one salvo, but not really too many. Itasca is like visibly shuddering from the type of hits that it is taking. It is significant. It's just not destroying it. Victorious gets enough damage that it falters and then kind of drops like a sledgehammer. A power surge must have hit it, and a starboard trim crystal array, because she abruptly rolls and flips and begins tumbling over and gets entangled in its own web. So it's not dead, but it's out of the fight, essentially, for now. And Itasca is trying to continue the turn to continue to fire towards Valiant. It was still doing that turn, and now it's like turning the broadside again. I think the proper thing for Bayard to do would have been to increase his pace and stay ahead of the spin, just as Grimm and Predator had done a few moments before. But in a seemingly foolish move that could have been from a panicked merchant skipper instead of someone as skilled as Bayard, he breaks in the other direction as if he's trying to disengage, which forces Itasca to turn a little bit less. But this maneuver shows the gaping hole in the belly armor of Itasca to Predator. And so Grimm yells at Kettle. Kettle already knows what's going on and dips under Itasca again, sliding into the shadow of the hull, and then rolls, or is preparing to roll, to fire at the injured area. Grimm tells to Journeyman, cut the port trim array, and he does so immediately, which puts the whole ship like this. Like they're completely vertical on the board, which is why he was so concerned about Gwen's straps. And trying to stand sideways, they fire directly upwards into Itasca, and going past the shroud and past the armor, firing into the interior does significant damage. The boiler explodes inside Itasca, which starts fires, and then there's a description of the sailors that are trying to get off of their safety straps, which is now harnessing them into the fires instead of keeping them safe from falling.
I really like the amount of thought Jim put into, like, so we have like flying kind of air spaceships thing, but we don't have artificial gravity. So how is that gonna work? Like, I think it's very well thought out. Something
Yeah,
I
all
might
sorts of
not even
people who work
consider.
at high areas have safety straps like that. Always at least 2 connected. So.
It's just a cool flavor and detail to the world. It adds, like you could have just copped out of me. Like the power crystal makes like fake gravity, like they do in a lot of sci-fi, right? They could have done that. But I think it's cool you didn't take the easy route, which also makes it more interesting and dynamic in combat. Like, oh no, now your now the thing that was saving you is holding you like in place in fire. You know, like stuff like that. It's cool.
Agreed. So after all of that damage, both Valiant stops firing and Predator stops firing, and they just kind of wait for a second as Itasca's hanging in the sky like a great stunned beast too dazed to understand its surroundings. But Grim can kind of hear orders being yelled at the bridge, and then the flag, the colors, it starts fluttering in the wind because the captain has cut it in surrender. And Grim can kind of see the captain on the bridge. He pulls out his sword and he offers the hilt towards Grim as a salute.
He's a proper gentleman.
Yes.
Right? It's also kind of wild because like Grim had the least to do with that fight in some ways, right? It's like,
but he took some of the most amount of risk.
That's true. Like he definitely made the risky plays, and he called for reinforcements, which was the right call and everything
Held
like that.
on,
But
lured them out. I think he did a lot of things there.
Yeah. But without those heavy cruisers, it would have gone the way everybody expected it to begin with, you know? So.
Yes. But the battle is over. And chapter 69 goes to Bridget's point of view. She is in the infirmary. Benedict is starting to wake up, and he's been unconscious for a long time after he got poisoned by the Silkweaver, hit in the head, burned, all sorts of things. And the infirmary has a description of like, there's a whole bunch of people on cots, and like the doctor and Master Ferris are just unconscious on the floor because they're so exhausted. Benedict was still strapped into one of the cots, and so as he's waking up, she needs to unstrap him so that he can immediately tack a bowl of stew because his metabolism is so depleted he needs to eat, and she needs to stay very, very still. She had been warned by the doctor how to handle an injured warrior born is don't get their attention before they've eaten. And then Benedict feels kind of bashful about his behavior, but she puts him at ease, and they have a catch-up discussion of like, what happened after this? What happened to your hand? What happened to Raoul? Raoul is not speaking to Bridget at the moment.
We haven't gotten to the biggest indignity of all yet.
Yeah.
Raoul.
Yeah. And then Bridget and Benedict scandalously hold hands.
Shock.
It switches to Gwen's point of view as they do the funeral of all of the people who had died in the battle. There's bodies that they can't recover that had fallen to the surface, but there was also so many bodies remaining that they could not put them on the bridge of any one ship. So they got a pallet for cargo loading from Itasca and loaded that with the bodies, and it's out on a tether in the middle, up in the space. And Grim gives the prayer for the dead, and it is similar to the Navy prayer that we might be more familiar with.
Oh yes,
as much
the
as
Navy
it is
prayer. I know this.
You know what I'm talking about.
I have no.
Just say
I guess it is just the
Don't
Lord's
let him-
Prayer, right? Whatever.
Yeah, don't let him derail you.
For as
No,
much as it has
sorry.
pleased God in heaven to take out of this world the souls of these men, we therefore commit their bodies to the winds, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust, looking for that blessed hope when God in heaven himself shall descend to earth with a shout, with the voices of the archangels, and with the trumpet of God. And when that which is no more shall be again, then we who are alive and remain shall see a new world born of this vale of tears and be rejoined with them in peace. Amen. And it was just very much like, to me, the Master and Commander funeral at the end of like, it's just the Lord's Prayer. This is very similar in structure, even if there's obviously very big differences.
I definitely think there's some lore things hidden in there for later where we'll be like,
Yeah.
since archangels are a real thing, then you got to wonder about the rest of it. So,
when that which is no more shall be again. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And the funeral detail is told to proceed, and when a Predator's cannon has been adjusted, lances out from its barrel, not the usual streaking comet of light, but a small glowing sun. It hits the pallet full of bodies, and they all incinerate very prettily, and they become dust. And then everybody starts going about their jobs again after what seeming like a coordinated moment of silence. And Aurorans go back to Itasca because there's no place to have them. Itasca is being towed back to Albion anyway. And Gwen doesn't know what to do with herself, so she goes to talk to Grim. And she has a lot of feelings that she doesn't know what to do with. And at home, she would talk to Esterbrook, but he's not there. And he offers her tea. And she says, I'm not sure this is a tea conversation. And he's like, okay, go on. And I have a horrible feeling. I killed a man a few days ago, an Auroran officer. I chose to do it, and he never had a chance. I saw that Silkweaver matriarch. I saw it do things. I was here for the battle. I saw it was terrible. I closed my eyes. I'm not quite sure what I need to be asleep to have nightmares anymore. And so then he starts getting out liquor of some form from his cabinet and gives her something like whiskey.
This is more of a liquor conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, not a tea conversation. And Grim understands. He's like, okay, so now you're back on the way to the people who haven't seen this thing, and they're not going to understand. And they haven't felt it. And Gwen is like, yes, exactly. So how do you talk to someone who has no idea? You talk to people instead who have some idea. And he points out, Gwen has seen the Mistmaw. And now she understands an idiom of her own world that she didn't know as much. Like that, the Mistmaw is the horrors of war, the horrors of harsh life, and it is not just an actual Mistmaw. Seeing the Mistmaw, like Grim has seen it, Kettle has seen it, any of the other people, and Predator has seen it by now. And those are the people she's going to be more connected to than the people of Albion who haven't seen it. And Gwen says, I'm not sure I want them to. It's fine. They don't need to. And in fact, a lot of what soldiers do is they see it so others don't have to. And it's a precious thing that they haven't seen it. It's okay for them. Why fight if not to protect others? And Gwen agrees with that, but she thought she was going mad. It's like, maybe, but if so, you're not alone. And she doesn't know how to live with this thing. And Grim says, I'm not sure anyone knows that, how to live with it. Time helps. It isn't as hard to bear in time. She says that Grim seems like he's fine. And yes, seems. He is not fine. He is not okay. And in a while, when he can, he'll break down and fall to pieces. But right now, he has to be moving and active. And so he's going to be okay. He has to seem okay to give hope to other people, which is his whole theme of a character. It's okay to seem okay. But if you are actually okay after seeing all those things, you're probably not an okay person. She's like, but I feel horrible. Good. You ought to. And as she's about to leave and she feels a little bit better, she says, it's funny. After the way I left, I suddenly find myself wanting very much to go home, but it won't be the same when I get back, will it? It will be the same. But Gwen is the one who has changed. Yeah. Now, Raoul is hiding in a box on a ship. He is suicidal. Bridget is...
The indignity he has gone through, it's...
Yes, he has been medically treated and saved and is perfectly fine and healthy, although he needs to heal a little bit, but he would like to die instead of be seen with a shaved spot on his head.
He's
and Bridget
shaved,
is bit.
Then he's got a cast on too, I believe. It's not dignifying.
Raoul, you have been in there for 2 days. We've landed back at Spire Albion. Are you ready to come out yet? He says, I will never come out. I am a freak. Because he is not furred everywhere. And Bridget just like points at her arm. Is like, yeah, of course you look bad. You are a human. You are a terrible friend because you will not kill me. Because he asks her to put him out of his misery. It's just a cast. The bone will heal. Why are you upset? Look at it. It's hideous. It's the most hideous thing there has ever been. Oh, not only does she pull at her arm because she is human and unfurred, but it's also broken and in a cast.
Yes.
Bridget is trying to ply him with the special dumplings that he loves so much. And he says, I no longer need interest myself in food. And he just, she picks him up and starts hugging him. And it gave him a brief glowing surge of delight, which was cheating. And Bridget just says that, like, you are my oldest friend. I would be lost without you. How can you want to leave me? And he feels bad.
Which is not fair.
Yeah. Which is not fair. And like, how can he leave her? She's so dumb and helpless. He can't leave her. And then he says, where? Where what? Where are my dumplings? Okay. Grimm is talking to Addison, Orson, Magnus, Jeremiah, Albion, Spirarch of Albion, after he has given his report and Albion has a chance to read it. The Spirarch, Grimm noted, read very, very quickly. And Albion says, I see that it has no mention of putting the captured crew of Itasca in chains. They weren't in chains. Captain Castillo had given his parole, as well as that of his crew. Just like that? Yes, just like that. And the Itascan crew also helped the rescue of the Thunderous crew, that anything that could be salvaged. And for that, they deserve commendation. It's like, why would they help the enemy crew that way? It's like, because we've all seen that, and we all have nightmares about that. Falling to the surface is horrible. No sky person's going to want to do that at all. Sailor, whatever.
Aeronaut. But
yeah, thank you. I'm running out of words here.
It's only just on the title of the book, so...
There is 99%.
I couldn't think of it, but I was thinking,
Almost.
there's a word for this.
Yeah.
Okay, so the losses. Thunderous was shot down. Heavy casualties. 153 dead, including all but one of the junior officers. 40 injured. But most managed to stay afloat on the trim crystals until rescue launches could find her in the mist. That's where the beacon, the signal beacon that someone did, was very helpful. They got the people off the ship, but the ship continued down into the surface. Is it salvageable? Who knows? Because it could be throwing good crystals after bad crystals to try to get the ship back. But they're also in war, and maybe they don't have a chance to be safe about it. Grimm asks what's going to happen to the Aurorans, and he says they are prisoners of war. I should imagine they would be set to work at the base of the spire. And Grimm says, no. No? No, sir. I've seen that place. You might as well tie a noose around their necks and stand them on blocks of ice if you want them to die a slow death. It would be cleaner. It's interesting that they send their own prisoners to work at the base of a spire, but he says that that's undignified for his prisoners of war. I don't know. It says things about how they treat their prisoners.
Yeah. Grimm probably wouldn't send his own prisoners there either, like their own, but he has no say in that. But he does have say over prisoners of war that, or he feels like they gave up to him, so he has a responsibility to them, right?
He does
and
feel
he does know the king.
of them. Albion does say, I'm not sure why this concerns you, Captain. And Grimm explains, well, they surrendered to him. He is responsible for them, and he will not see Captain Castillo repaid with such churlish treatment. And Albion just like, continue. So Victorious took moderate casualties among their crew, with 11 dead and 41 injured. Heavy damage to hull and mast rigs can be repaired within 10 days. Valiant took only light damage with no deaths, half a dozen injuries, and Bayard already has her back in fighting condition. Predator has lost 22 men in all. 33 are injured. We lost a single heavy cruiser and captured Itasca, or what's left of her, since they did do too much damage than they wanted to do. Bayard's report, Albion says, notes that the only reason Itasca could be taken at all was that you lured her into pursuing Predator. Grimm just says it was the right thing to do. But it was the crazy risk of letting be bait to something like Itasca to make it work. And many men recognize the right thing to do, but when it means putting themselves at risk, relatively few will still do it, because Albion is coming to the point of talking about Rook. Grimm's report very scathingly describes Rook, accuses him of cowardice in the face of the enemy. Yes, he got scared, he ran. If Glorious had stood fast, we wouldn't have lost Thunderous, and might well have taken Itasca whole and functioning. Rook's report to the Admiralty reads somewhat differently. He claims that the blast concussion...
No way.
Blast concussion shorted the leads in his lift crystal temporarily, and that he could not maintain altitude. Well, he's a damned liar. Ask Bayard. Albion did, and Bayard reports that he was too far from being able to see anything, so he cannot give veracity on one side or the other. So it's Grimm's word against Rook's, and Grimm's out of fleet and not in good standing with people who matter. And so he says, shall I ask Captain Castillo for the courtesy of a report? And Albion finds that laughable, and he does laugh and says, like, I believe you. I'm certain the good captain would back up your report, but I'm afraid his word wouldn't carry much weight with the fleet admiralty either. So Rook gets away with it. Yes, he gets away with it for now, Albion says. So Albion wants to know, how would you review Albion's performance in this crisis? We failed. We couldn't stop the attack at landing. Our enemies escaped after burning down a priceless collection of knowledge. Innocents died. The landing shipyard has been destroyed. There's only a single bright point in all of this mess, and that being, Grimm pulled out the 2 identical books that he had, because one was saved by the monk at the Temple of the Way, and the other one was taken from Cavendish. And so they have both copies. And supposedly, Auroran doesn't have it at all. Cavendish doesn't have it. But that was the thing that this whole thing was about. So that's the bright side. And that was not mentioned in any report. And Grimm, that's like, this probably shouldn't be written down. he just kind of had that gut feeling. Yeah. But that was precisely the right thing to do. This entire incident has been extremely unfortunate. And Grimm points out what he put together of it could have been worse, because Albion had clearly let the crime gangs in landing know that something bad was going to happen. They were more prepared than they should have been for the fires and the evacuees and the crisis of it all. And Albion's like, oh, that's very interesting. How fortunate they reacted so quickly. What are you implying, Captain? You couldn't trust your own guard, but you needed someone with the numbers and the muscle and the organization to do the job. And while the motivation for the guilds might be distasteful, it is utterly constant. They want money. They need a place to work. Very interesting theory, Captain, but isn't very terribly credible. I am a figurehead of government, and that's all I do. Everybody knows that. Yes, my mistake. And then Grimm says, like, why would they do all of this for that book? And Albion's like, I'm not sure. I suppose we could ask. The task that offers is not going to know anything about it, because it was basically being taken by Miss Chark, and Miss Chark is nowhere to be found. They are definitely on their way back to Aurora. It would not be possible to find them somewhere in the mists. They're gone. Cannot reach them right now. Something that hit me when I was reading this again was neither one of them opens up the book to see what it is. Like, they don't like look at it and see it's a confusing thing of sketches, or it's like a list of whatever. Just like they don't look at it,
isn't it? So
something like that's what we get from Cavendish in a minute, but like they don't look at it to see what it is, why it's important. They just say, well, why would they want this thingy?
Yeah,
I think Albion already knows.
Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair, Grimm almost certainly did back on the ship, and Albion already knows, would be my guess too. So, yeah. Like, Grimm reads his mail. Do you really think he didn't crack open the book and just be like, I have no idea what this is, but it's wild that they killed everybody for this?
Yeah, if Albion understands whatever implications of it that Cavendish does, that'd be interesting. But even, like, it's probably just for the dramatic moment that we get to right now of, like, it's a list of things. What are this? Like, but they skip that to be able to have on the Mist Shark, Aspira is sinking into depression, and he's being summoned by Cavendish again. And he goes into her cabin, and she looked a fright. Her hair was mussed. Her sleeves had been rolled up, and ink smudged her fingers and made a random splatter of droplets on her lean forearms. She grimly gripped a quill, as if the muscles in her hand had long since locked in position from overuse, and she was writing furiously on a piece of paper. Several stacks of several hundred more pieces of paper sat on the table beside her, everything covered with a maniacal precision, every one of them covered in bold, angular writing. And she demands any of the men that he has who are proficient enough in writing to be able to copy things down. And copies must be made from these pages. And then she's like, Aspira's looking at this like, did you write all this down from memory? It's like, obviously. What do you think I've been doing the past several days? I will make inquiries in which my men can read and write. We should know that they're not chosen as Auroran Marines for their penmanship. Acknowledged, but it must be done. So Aspira now asks the smart question of, what is so important in this book? And she just says names. Several hundred pages worth of names.
Right.
Okay.
It's a phone book.
I guess
So-
it depends
really
how
fucking
literal
could
you
be.
take it. It could be more than just names. It could be a telling, but there are names within there that are important. Not exactly all of it is names.
I think it's like Genesis. That's why. So, you know.
Mm. That could work. Folly sat up screaming and kept on screaming until she realized how uncomfortable it was, and then she stopped. Ferris comes clomping up the ladder to her loft and asks about her, and she says, "Again, master, I dreamed it again. I dreamed a spire surrounded in darkness with death pouring in through its walls. I dreamed of thousands of ships like crystal rising from the earth, and wherever they went, people died. I saw a spire fall, collapse as if it had been made of sand, and I dreamed of Predator on fire, burning, breaking up, men falling from her like tiny toys." And Ferris is very serious, regarding her with compassion. And she says, "They're not dreams, are they?" "No, it's the future." "Yes." "So why am I having these dreams?" "Because it is the beginning." "What is the beginning?" "The end." Because nothing can be straightforward with him. And she is frightened, and so is he.
It's the beginning of the end.
He can't just say these things. It's like it has to be a back and forth. All right. We're done.
We did it.
Yeah, it's
What do you
not that it
think
can't
is?
be. Go ahead.
So, what do you think is the better first book? I don't think Stormfront's the best first book of these 3 series that Jim's written, but of Furies of Calderon or this one, which is the better first book?
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd agree.
Yeah.
Furies.
It doesn't feel like a first book, for example, you know.
There are some things about it that you can see is the first book of like it has to do a little bit more explaining of like basic lore, basic things. Like you can kind of see the stitching of like giving the information where people shouldn't need to necessarily ask these questions, but it kind of jumps into the action a lot more. Furies has obviously a lot more setup of.
I mean, I did eventually
Boy on a
grow to
Farm.
like the series, right? But I struggle getting through the second book so many times, whereas
I love
this
second book.
series.
I don't get it.
I mean, we've talked about this before. I don't know why, but it did grow on me. Third book is marvelous. This one captured me right away. Like I couldn't put it down the first time I read it. I remember, like I went through it really fast. And the short story's good too. The next book's really good too. Like, I'm very excited for the next book, which is probably still gonna be a while. I don't know if the writing updates have been updated on his website recently, but I believe it's not even started yet.
No, he's still working on 12 months, but seems to be getting close to the end.
Yeah, it should be done by my last birthday, I think, is what I was told. So, you know, only a few months
thing I
past
saw
that.
was apparently in Dragon Con, he said the next 3 or 4 weeks he would have 12 months finished.
It says 78% on his website. So,
yeah,
maybe my next birthday then.
Yeah. We'll get to reading. We'll read Warrior Born at some point. We'll read the Olympian Affair at some point, but we have other things to talk about next time, like anime, and that's really important. So
anime is important.
It is.
We're putting Justin on a journey here. We'll make a weeb out of him.
No. That's been clear anyway, but a journey.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say before the closing spiel?
Nope.
Okay. Well, this has been an episode of While We Weren't Recording. We are live every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can support us at patreon.com/brokenjars. You can join our Discord that way and get to have gift wars with us. Talk about anime with Justin because he's an anime expert now. And next week we're talking Dresden Files. Did we finish Summer Night? We didn't. Of course we didn't. we're finishing. We're
so
maybe
close.
finishing Summer Night and moving into the next book for casting and TV show.
Casting again.